My favorite article that I read on this topic was from the December 15, 2008 Newsweek magazine by Lisa Miller, titled Our Mutual Joy. She writes, "Let's try for a minute to take the religious conservatives at their word and define marriage as the Bible does. Shall we look to Abraham, the great patriarch, who slept with his servant when he discovered his beloved wife Sarah was infertile? Or to Jacob, who fathered children with 4 different women, 2 sisters and their servants? Abraham, Jacob, David, Solomon, the kings of Judah and Israel. All these fathers and heroes were polygamists. The New Testament model of marriage is hardly better. Jesus himself was single and preached an indifference to earthly attachments, especially family. The Apostle Paul, also single, regarded marriage as an act of last resort for those who are unable to contain their animal lust. It is better to marry than to burn with passion, says the apostle, in the most lukewarm endorsement of a treasured institution ever uttered. The battle over gay marriage has been waged for more than a decade, but within the last 6 months, and of course I'm reading her article, so that's changed. Since California legalized gay marriage and then with a ballot initiative in November amended its constitution to prohibit it, the debate has grown into a full-scale war, with religious rhetoric slinging to match. Not since 1860, when the country's pulpits were full of preachers making pronouncements on slavery, pro and con, has one of our basic social and economic institutions been so subject to biblical scrutiny. But whereas in the Civil War, the traditionalists had their James Henry Thornwell and the advocates for change their Henry Ward Beecher, this time the sides are unevenly matched. All the religious rhetoric seems to have been on the side of gay marriage opponents, who use Scripture as a foundation for their objections. In addition to its praise of friendship and condemnation of divorce, the Bible gives many examples of marriages that defy convention yet benefit the greater community. The Torah discouraged ancient Hebrews from marrying outside the tribe, yet Moses himself is married to a foreigner, Zipporah. Queen Esther is married to a non-Jew, and according to legend, saves the Jewish people. Rabbi Arthur Waska of the Shalom Center in Philadelphia believes that Judaism thrives through diversity and inclusion. I don't think Judaism should or ought to want to leave any portion of the human population out of the religious process, he says. We should not want to leave homosexuals outside the sacred tent. The marriage of Joseph and Mary is also unorthodox, to say the least, in the case of an unconventional arrangement accepted by society for the common good. The boy needed 2 human parents, after all. Okay. So this is the end of my book report part of the sermon. So what do I want you to take away from our time together today? I want you to remember that we will not move forward as a community and not be a voice at the table of religious debate on this subject if we, and by that I mean everyone here today, are not willing to discuss this on anything other than the legal and civil rights terms. We must be willing to see this as a religious and moral issue. We can't allow the so-called religious right or the family value groups to own the religious playing field when it comes to how we see same-sex relations. These groups are always challenging the morality, or as they call it, the immorality of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender relationships. You don't see so-called family value groups challenging the irresponsible behavior of men in marriages in any substantial way that involves consequences. These largely men-led groups do little, if anything, to challenge men who repeatedly cheat on their wives, abuse their wives, or neglect their wives. In fact, men's irresponsible behaviors is blamed on their wives. Their wives are encouraged to be more sexy, more dutiful, to pray and to accept the abuse and stay in the relationship no matter what, denying the awful trauma and example this presents to women and their children. Contrast this to the unabashed support supplied to Rudolph Giuliani a man who married 3 times and cheated on his second wife repeatedly, and Newt Gingrich, who left behind 2 wives, one of whom was recovering from cancer at the time, for younger women. Not to mention the conservative politicians who were caught in prostitution scandals, gay public sex in parks and airport bathrooms, all of whom have stayed in office and have continued to deny Glenn and I the right to marry. Let's challenge them. Share our religious and moral convictions that same-sex couples are just as moral, just as sacred, just as worthy as straight couples. That God, the goddess, the universe, spirit of life, source of all beauty and creation, values same-sex relationships. Please don't be afraid to include these along with the legal, constitutional, and justice-related arguments for support of same-sex marriage. Oh, and you didn't get to notice this, but as you can see by the way that I'm dressed today, that it's just my way of showing how much I truly want to walk down the aisle and be married with the man that I have loved and lived with for over 22 years, surrounded by family and friends, and have it count. Not just in the Unitarian Universalist community, but in Colorado and all the states and territories of the United States of America and anywhere else we might travel. I ask you to consider being allies with us in this quest. I leave you with the following from Christian scripture, which I think sums it all up for me. Many of you will be familiar with it. It has been spoken at countless weddings. A reading from the first letter of Paul to the Corinthians. Set your hearts on the greatest gifts. I will show you the way which surpasses all others. If I speak with human tongues and angelic as well, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong, a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and with full knowledge comprehend all mysteries, if I have faith great enough to move mountains, but not love, I am nothing. If I give everything I have to feed the poor and hand over my body to be burned, but not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not jealous. It does not put on airs. It is not snobbish. Love is never rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not prone to anger. Neither does it brood over injuries. Love does not rejoice in what is wrong, but rejoices in the truth. There is no limit to love's forbearance, to its trust, its hope, its power to endure. Love never fails.